So, and we are live. What's up, wrestling fans? I have returned from multiple Canadian destroyers, just blowing my brain. I'm still a little sluggish. I take some naps now and forget things sometimes, but I'm getting back to being healthy once again. What's up? And thanks for covering the show for us, Kevin, during my
Doug,
time of need.
it is good to have you back after 2 weeks away. Welcome back to the Two Bros Wrestling Show, and you're looking fit. So no Canadian destroyers this week. Thank you, Zelina, for listening to our pleas. It's proof she watches the show that she didn't do a Canadian
Absolutely.
destroyer this week.
Absolutely. I could not handle any more Canadian destroyers. They I just don't understand them. Reality breaks. My brain and reality breaks a little bit every time one of those happens.
And apparently it kept him down for the count for 2 whole weeks. So that's how serious this is about messing him up. But
And now I have some memory issues, some cognitive problems, and I sleep like, my 82-year-old father-in-law a lot now. So, but doctors say that should wear off in a little while. Let's hope so.
in all seriousness, it is good to have you back here on the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Glad you're doing better. Glad that you all are tuning in. Thanks, everyone. Tonight's main event topic, of course, we are 6 weeks away now, Doug, from WrestleMania.
There we go. Got my notes
6
ready.
weeks away. And we are here in our main event topic to talk about the last stop on that road to WrestleMania, which was last night's Elimination Chamber. So we will be talking winners and losers and what it means for everyone's road to the biggest event of the wrestling year. But that is our main event topic, Doug. As always,
this is really distracting that there is a power drill in the shot. Sorry.
Like,
I don't know if it was distracting anybody besides me, but it was distracting to me. Sorry.
I apologize here live on air seeing Doug grab a drill. I got really frightened. I'm like, what is he doing? Don't go off script without telling me he's grabbing.
I've got a drill. I'm grabbing a guitar. We're covering Pound Cake live on Bros.
Oh my! Let's hit that bell.
Let's do it.
All right. Obviously, the big news in the wrestling world was the things that happened last night. But since we are talking about that in our main event, let's talk something that not Elimination Chamber and maybe not WWE. I guess WWE adjacent. So not WWE is Trinity. Anyone holding out hope that Naomi would be returning to WWE anytime soon are going to be disappointed in this first story. This week, the former SmackDown Women's Champion updated her Instagram, suggesting that she might very well be done with WWE. It still includes references to her Twitter handle and everything, but her Twitter. But no more is her ring name a part of her Instagram handle. It's now just reads just Trinity. This Trinity. Follows obviously being going through Royal Rumble without a surprise appearance and her not being a part of this bloodline angle as it's reaching its conclusion. So safe to say that Trinity is not going to be coming to WWE anytime soon. And as far as her partner, who we know will not be coming back to WWE anytime soon, who walked out with Trinity back in May, the former Sasha Banks
walked out with something else last night, didn't she, Kevin?
Mercedes Moné, Doug, is your new IWGP Women's Champion.
Yes, she is.
It's her first match back since walking out of WWE back in May of 2022. She won at last night's New Japan Pro Wrestling Battle in the Valley in San Jose, California. So congratulations to it's hard for me to not say Sasha Banks, Doug. I don't know about you.
I almost wanted to say congratulations to the boss, but that is not right either. But Miss Moné.
Maybe Miss Moné. Maybe I can Mercedes Moné. For some reason, it's just not getting me just yet. But New Japan got what they wanted. They got a lot of eyeballs on their event, in their American premium live event. I guess they're still trying to crack this market. Doug, this actually leads into our next story. Also at last night's event, since we're talking the New Japan event in San Jose, Jay White lost a loser leave New Japan Pro Wrestling match. And Doug, it's been rumored for a while that he was on his way out of New Japan, and Jay White is officially a free agent. It was a storyline loser leave town match, but his contract legit is up. And I mean, he's expected to land in AEW or WWE because really after a big run main eventing New Japan for a couple of years, like where else would there be logically to go? There really isn't anywhere else to go that would be at the same level of what he's leaving. But Dave Meltzer, our good friend Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer kind of inserted himself, maybe unintentionally inserted himself into this story by saying that his WWE contacts, those that who are usually on top of things as far as like surprises for Mania season, said that Jay White, just to their knowledge anyway, his sources were saying is not part of WWE's surprises, and that they were, let me make sure I get this right, quote, there was a much bigger major free agent in play that was the internal priority. And that set the internet abuzz because speculation wise, who would be bigger than a Jay White that is actually available?
See this perplexed face? Because that's what I'm wondering. Who's bigger than Jay? Unless, again, back to Tama Tonga, but I think I love them both, but I think Jay White is the bigger free agent there.
Much bigger. So, your mileage may vary as to whether or not these sources just were in the dark or fed some bad information, Meltzer, but the prevailing notion right now is that free agent that was being spoken of could very well be one Kenny Omega. This would be about the time that Kenny's contract was supposed to be up.
This guy?
Yeah, that guy.
This guy?
You have to admit, I mean, if you have to think bigger than Jay White that would be available, Kenny would fit that profile. If there's any truth to these rumors at all. And supposedly, though, that if there is a free agent, Kenny Omega, it should have been around this time. But if Tony Khan really wants to play hardball, Kenny Omega missed much of last year because of injury, and he very well could extend that contract, add time onto that contract just to keep him out of the hands of WWE a little bit longer. Let's take these one at a time, Doug. First, the one that we know for sure, Jay White. Obviously, it's AEW or WWE. Where do you see him as the better fit?
Man, Switchblade, all the way back to the Cow Palace. There was a Juice Robinson, Jay White. I forgot what they were even wrestling for. It was the first time I actually had any, and this was when Jay White was still in Chaos at the time. He wasn't Bullet Club yet, but it's the first time I had actually come across Jay White. I saw this guy and I was like, this guy is a major, major talent. So I think either one of these places would be, very lucky to have Jay White. Switchblade Jay White is an awesome talent. I think he would mesh well in Triple H's WWE or in AEW. AEW seems to have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent, though, that they end up, not doing a lot with. Looking at you, Keith Lee. And others, it's like, I would love to see Kota Ibushi in AEW too, but I don't know. I think, and I hate to say this, and I'm sorry, Tony, but I think a better place for Switchblade might be WWE.
I think you hit my feelings when you said that Triple H's version, because if this story happened at the first part of the year, I would say Jay White, don't go get buried. Do a good run at NXT or come to the main roster and get lost in the shuffle. AEW is your place. Now, I would almost say it's a toss-up that I agree. He's too big a star not to do well wherever. Obviously, he's had a bit of screen time already with AEW, but I'm kind of with you. I think that there's maybe some more exciting things for him right now in WWE land, but it'll be interesting to see. You mentioned Ibushi. That obviously is another rumor. As far as who that bigger free agent may be, but some folks are discounting that one because of Ibushi's stated desire to remain a sort of independent contractor, if you will, and he's starting up a wrestling school.
And that's something very much with Ibushi. He doesn't like being tied down, apparently. He's very, very slippery with those contracts and everything. I think this last New Japan contract was his most restrictive contract that he's had. And I don't know that it was that restrictive, but
Do,
yeah.
do we think that there's much to put behind these Kenny rumors, or is this a MJF situation where you may just use one side against the other to get yourself more money?
This
Do
is
you see a
totally
Kenny Omega walking away?
not unless he walks with the Bucks. I can see Cody going, which he did. I can see Hangman going if the money was right. I think Hangman would go, but I do not see the Elite being broken up at all. I can see the Elite going to WWE as a potential thing, but I don't see Kenny going as Kenny.
Supposedly WWE does have interest in both Kenny and the Bucks at this point, which is
Of
something that maybe
course.
wasn't said back in the days when each of them tried out and never got that call. It's a different day in WWE creatively,
Hmm.
obviously. That will be interesting to watch play out, Doug. See if, I mean, you talk about moving some needles. I mean, Cody's one thing, but if others start following that path to
If you could
Stanford,
start plucking the founding fathers, I mean the legitimate, foundation. I'm not
yeah.
talking like the pillars of. I'm talking the foundation of AEW here. Yeah, I mean you've already got Cody, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But I mean, I just don't see it happening. I mean, it's all elite wrestling. You really can't have all elite wrestling
And no
without the
elite.
elite.
I mean, you can have a Blackpool Combat Club apparently without the guy from Blackpool, so you never know.
Okay, fair enough. You can. Fair enough.
Hey, well, we're in Tony Khan land, Doug. Let's talk Ring of Honor. The first new TV episodes of Ring of Honor, we now know. And yes, nice choice on the shirt. Um, Ring of Honor, the first new TV since the fall of 2021, is coming on Thursday, March 2nd, according to Tony Khan himself. These new episodes will be featured on the newly revived Honor Club streaming platform. The first tapings are going to be next weekend, the 25th and 26th at Universal Studios in Orlando. Ride the Harry Potter stuff while you're there. It's awesome. Thunder Rosa's roller coaster career with AEW has taken yet another turn, Doug. She's not been in the ring since August. As you know, she had to be stripped of the AEW women's title. There's still no word on how her recovery is going
Right.
from injury. But what we do know now is she's apparently not all that close to returning to the ring because she's officially taken on a non-wrestling role with AEW, and she is now part of AEW's Spanish announce team.
So lots of tables going down in front of Thunder Rosa in the future.
It's being just
But
like taunting her, right?
right. But I did catch this story, and you probably seen it too, how Thunder Rosa has addressed the locker room and apologized for her past transgressions. So there's a little bit of redemption arc going on here with Thunder Rosa behind the scenes anyway, which I think is interesting. And maybe that leads to other redemption arcs down the road with others, which I hope not. I hope we're done with Punk. But things you never thought Doug would say, but here we are.
Here we are. Doug, before we get to the main event, we'll have one more news item here. And unfortunately, it does not seem like we can have a week in 2023 without reporting a significant death in the wrestling community. This week, it was legendary wrestling promoter Jarrett, who died at the age of 80. And I mean, he had a distinguished in-ring career of his own, but his legacy is definitely going to be that as a promoter. I think, Doug, for fans that are, if you're out there watching, and if you're Doug's age, my age, or younger, you probably just think of Jerry Jarrett as Jeff's dad.
Jeff Jarrett.
But I mean, listen to this bio, just if you want to know the importance of Jerry Jarrett. So his style of TV was very heavy on skits and interviews. It's probably the closest thing we have to what modern wrestling looks like today. He was literally born into this business. His mother worked in the office with Nick Goulas and Roy Welch, and then later she became one of the very first women wrestling promoters in all of the United States. Jerry himself began promoting spot shows for his mother as a teenager. He worked in the office and was one of the youngest bookers in the country by the late 1960s. He had a run. He was one of the top baby faces, but stepped away to devote himself completely to being behind the ring and booking and writing. And after feeling he was swindled in a business deal with Gulas, he started up his own promotion in 1977. By this point, Jerry the King Lawler was the top star in the promotion, and Jarrett can be given a lot of credit in creating Lawler as the King of Memphis, which was something he really started for the King back in 1974. So by the time he came to own his own promotion in 77 to compete with his former boss, mind you, Jarrett had Lawler in his corner, as well as announcers Lance Russell, one of my all-time favorites, and Dave Brown. And they were able to get Memphis NBC television at the time and to take their Saturday morning show. They dominated the market and basically ran Gulas out of business in his own home there of business. And during the territory era, most promoters would either pay for their own television production, and then sometimes you'd either send a tape in, but some wrestling promoters actually had to buy their TV time like an infomercial, which of course in the long run became economically unsustainable for the territories. But Jarrett was one of the few of that time to actually get paid for TV, because Memphis wrestling drew such big ratings with its Saturday show, it became a local institution. In the late 70s, early 80s, more than 20% of the homes in the metro area watched the show, and more than 70% of the television sets on during that time period were watching Memphis wrestling in Memphis. It was by far the highest rated wrestling show in the country, on the back of Lawler, it should be said, the announcers, and of course then the unique characters and booking of Jarrett, which in many ways predates the kind of wrestling we have today. Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett would rotate as the booker, take turns, and Jarrett eventually cut Lawler in for 50% of the Memphis promotion. He remained with the promotion until its demise in 1997, which was a lot longer of a holdout than most guys were able to hold out against the Vince, of course, when he sold the company in 97. He booked Georgia for a bit as well in the 70s, Dallas, but this shows his swagger behind the scenes, his reputation. When Vince McMahon feared he was going to be going to jail after being indicted and under investigation, and the government went after him for steroid distribution charges in the 80s, Vince brought Jarrett in with the idea that if I went to prison, Jarrett is going to run the company. Obviously, McMahon wasn't convicted, so that there went that plan. But that's how well respected Jarrett was. He attempted to get back into wrestling by buying WCW in 2000. He was one of the many suitors for that company, was unable to pull that off. And then, of course, when that didn't happen, again, other than being Jeff's dad, most modern fans might know he is the founder and starter, along with Jeff, of TNA, which is now known as Impact Wrestling.
Yeah.
2002. And they had to sell the majority interest in that to the Carter family, Dixie Carter and her family, after just a few months of money losses that weren't sustainable. But still, a lot of the credit for what Impact was at the time. And Doug, if you look back at that era of Impact Wrestling, in some ways we took for granted what a golden age it was when you look at all who they had under that banner, with your AJ Styles and Chris Daniels and Kazarian and Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle.
Absolutely.
It's an embarrassment of riches, really. Maybe didn't get their due.
Absolutely. I think it is important to acknowledge, we always think of Vince McMahon as the father of modern day wrestling, but I think without the contributions of Jarrett, we wouldn't have the angles and the storylines that are modern wrestling I think Jarrett put over a lot more of the storylines and the drama than the athleticism in the ring, definitely. And I prefer a nice balance of both, but either way, I think we do need to acknowledge Jarrett as one of the fathers of modern wrestling.
I mean, it wouldn't look the same without him. So definitely our condolences to the fans, friends, and of course to Jeff and the rest of the Jarrett family. Thank you, Jerry Jarrett. And with that, let's talk happier things.
Let's talk some happier things, like Elimination Chamber.
Let's go to that main event, man. So
I'm not sure how happy I'm getting ahead of myself because. Yeah, let's get to our main event. Let's talk Elimination Chamber.
So we're non-spoiler. It's the last stop before WrestleMania. So do we even have to say, yes, absolutely, this is a show you must see? There's a lot of consequences that are going to play into Mania. A lot of paths to Mania are more clear. There were some duds, in my opinion, some things that maybe you can skip and we'll complain about. But by and large, the Triple H era continues its streak of having very newsworthy and strong shows with some killer matches that covers up any of the negatives. So that's the non-spoiler. Doug, what do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, catch this show. I mean, if you haven't already, go catch this show. It's well worth the viewing. There are some things I did not like, not necessarily booking things, but some booking things I didn't like. Some things were just I think it could have been done better, but they are what they are at this point. But overall, watch the whole thing.
So we're going to go match by match, go into spoiler territory now and talk winners. But before we even say who won these matches, Doug, what I like to do is talk a little bit about what happens in the matches. We'll say then who wins. And then before we move to the next match, I want to have a conversation with you about each of these as what it means for WrestleMania itself.
Let's do it.
So we open with the Elimination Chamber, the women's Elimination Chamber with Liv, Carmella, Asuka, Natalya, Nikki Cross, and Raquel Rodriguez. The winner punching her ticket to WrestleMania and facing Bianca Belair for the title. A bit surprised, maybe. I don't know, Doug. Were you surprised it wasn't the men's Elimination Chamber that didn't start, or?
Actually, this to me kind of harkens back to like Vince McMahon era, where we go ahead and get the ladies on and get them their 15 minutes or their 5 minutes of Raw or whatever they used to have, and get it out of the way and move on quickly. Because it to me, this was booked like, okay, it's a foregone conclusion what's going to happen here. We're just going to go through the motions, knock everything out as quickly as we can, and not make it a incredibly high spot, exciting kind of thing. It's just like, we know this is going to be the winner. We know she's going. It could have been done so much better for me. Which, if we want, how about you though? I mean, what were you thinking about this?
I first thought, it has Mania implications. Like, you're literally going to be on one of the women's main events. It should be on later, and the men should have gone first since it doesn't. But I thought the more I thought about it, it's going at least 45 minutes to an hour ish, I guess. And so knowing that if you're not the main event itself, and we all know what the main event was going to be, maybe opening and getting the crowd going is the next best spot to be. So maybe it wasn't the slight that I first thought it was.
Well, that's fair.
Natty and Liv started, which I thought it was kind of cool for Liv to be the first one in the Elimination Chamber after being the first one in Royal Rumble. It shows the company has a lot of faith, I think, in her. To carry a match for a long length now, which is kind of cool to be known for that. I liked how Liv and Natty began placing each other's heads through the chamber chains, which I'm not sure that I'd seen that before. Like choking each other with chains. I'm like, that's a really cool visual.
Yes. It was a very cool visual, but I'm thinking as each person comes in, I mean, I don't remember which Elimination Chamber it was where they have Shayna Baszler in there, and Baszler just comes in and cleans house, kind of like the female Brock Lesnar. It seemed the way the booking goes down, and with who won winning, which I think was a foregone conclusion, it was her all the time anyway, just like it was Agnes all along.
Agnes didn't win. If she was in it, I would,
But, I would have loved to have seen Asuka just unleashed, the Empress of Tomorrow unleashed, and just run that ring. That didn't happen.
I mean, if you're talking about someone that came in and dominated in the Shayna Baszler style, that might have been Raquel. I mean, they gave her many chances. I mean, I get it. And I liked it that she's the largest woman. She's needs to look like, if she's in the Rumble, she eliminates a bunch of people, but maybe doesn't win. Same thing here. Maybe she's not your person that you have tabbed to take the whole thing, but the crowd was definitely into the power spot where Raquel, actually she was showing her power, but Natty's sunset flip ended up sending Raquel and Liv into the cage. That looked cool. Nikki had her moments. I thought she was the first to climb to deliver the big crossbody, which kind of reminded me that, this cage used to be a lot shorter. Do you remember the days when guys would get up on the pod
Yes.
and they'd have to hunker down?
Hunker down. Yes.
They can monkey bar across. You got headspace up there now, which I think's
You
better because it
you
allows.
definitely do have headspace up there. You can flip around and do all kinds of crazy
Yeah, the
things.
flips
But
I think are benefit from having that.
yeah, absolutely.
Of course, you can't have a chamber match without somebody going through the pods. Nikki was the
Right.
first one to take that risk as well. So Nikki had definitely her moments. Of course, that one spot led to her being the first one eliminated.
Yeah.
I thought Liv had maybe the spot of the women's match with the great looking sunset flip from the top of the pod that took Raquel from the
Yes.
turnbuckles.
Yeah.
And then Asuka was the last one in, and it was obvious from the get go, Doug, either like us, you could sort of see what was coming, or the crowd was just totally hot into Asuka and they'd made the right booking decision because this
Right.
revamped version of Asuka, the crowd is behind.
Absolutely. I would have preferred to see Asuka start in that number one position and just run everything, just run the whole chamber. We didn't get that, but that's okay. I mean, still the right Empress won. So
To me, my biggest quibble would have been, well, first, I need to call out because I had my notes, forgot to mention that double submission spot was cool with Natty doing the
yes,
sharpshooter in Montreal. And then, of course, Asuka holding a finisher submission as well. The crowd didn't like Liv being eliminated. I get it because I love Liv as well. But to
but
me, go ahead.
as I say, it's the best way for Liv to be eliminated because she doesn't,
So,
or
yeah.
she could not tap at that point. So she passes out, which is great for Liv. I mean, it's great for Liv's future because again, like you said, they have a lot of faith in Liv. They put her first in the Royal Rumble and now first in Elimination Chamber, and she gets eliminated not because she submits, but because she passes out because she
To
is in a
two
double
submissions.
two submissions. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
I love this for her because I think she's just been so underrated for so long. It is one of those things where you can win without being the winner. And I think that over this
Absolutely,
last month, she's had two big victories that didn't end with her having her hand raised at the end. To me, though, I wish that they would have left Raquel or Liv. I get why Liv, had the nice spot where she had the double elimination. But as soon as Raquel was eliminated, there went any believability that anything but a foregone conclusion of Asuka was winning this one because Carmella's just not a main eventer, believable main event WrestleMania person at this. Raquel would have been like the Raquel versus Bianca would have been. So I thought it was interesting that unless they just were trying to protect Raquel by not having her take a high profile loss. But this one was solid, but not spectacular. Maybe just lacking some drama on the back end.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
What do you think about Bianca versus Asuka? This is obviously Asuka is your winner. So this is the WrestleMania implications. Do you like Bianca Asuka?
I like Bianca Asuka. I'm not sure who's the heel here, though. I mean, are we going to go babyface into this? Yeah, because there's a lot of people behind Asuka. There clearly was a lot of people behind Asuka last night in Canada. Of course, Canada is Bizarro world. So, but who's the babyface? Who's the heel? Or are we going to get? Are we even going to get that at WrestleMania? We're going to get babyface. Somebody has got to, turn this up in the 40 some days that are left.
So would you go face versus face, or are we Cody Rhodes here going, why does everyone have to make it personal? Someone going to turn to put some heat on this, or do you think you can have a compelling match with them both complimenting one another for 6 weeks?
I think we have learned, especially by last night's main event, that classic booking with good versus evil is what you absolutely need in professional wrestling. Can they build a compelling story like that? That's been built for like 9 months in 6 weeks? No, but they can go ahead and do the classic good versus evil. Somebody's got to be the babyface. Somebody's got to be the heel.
Who's going to be evil in your mind? Who would you make it?
I
know it's Bizarre
Bianca.
World.
I would turn Bianca. I would turn her and let the EST be the heel EST. I think it would go great.
I mean, it's been it's been a while. We saw a heel Bianca in NXT. It's been a while since that, and I think it's fresher than. I mean, poor Asuka needs a rehab of her character because of the way she'd been, on and off and forgotten and injured, and having her come back and with the fans behind her, I just would keep riding that train too.
Absolutely. So
let's see how they do that.
We know that WWE watches the show, so we'll see what Trips does next.
All right, Doug.
What was
my one true dud of the night, and that's Lashley versus Lesnar. So as with most modern Lesnar matches, they didn't waste time getting to the big power signature spots. We had your spears and we had your F5s and everything right in the first few minutes. And then the Hurt Lock comes on and suddenly there's that BS non-ending. I thought it was actually going pretty well the way it was structured before that. I think ending, I mean, honestly, if they were having this match again at Mania, that ending makes a little bit more sense. In fact, I called it last week. I know you weren't able to join us, but the way that I laid out the match, I'm like, we expected to get this at Mania, but now that we're not, it could be a DQ finish, but you can get away with a DQ finish if you actually had more of a match before you went to it. The fact that you ended it like that so quickly, it's a dud.
It is totally a dud. I expected, something to lead to WrestleMania, but I was thinking more of a reunited Hurt Business interfering at some point. But unlike the Bloodline, who never get caught when they interfere, we have something where there's a DQ finish, which leads us on into WrestleMania. This was just not a good finish in my mind. This is my dud too of the night because, like you say, it was going pretty good. You've got these. Yeah. Two big thick boys in there, doing their things, and
the crowd hot. The crowd was hot for Lesnar. He was over, man.
It's almost like Lesnar heard, wait a minute, the winner of this has to go against Bray Wyatt. Am I going to be in like a neon glowy match? No, I'm done. Yeah, I'm punching my ticket out. I don't want anything to do with that.
So let's go there. Like WrestleMania, I thought for sure that Lashley was being saved for Mania, and then they get to it. And last week I'm previewing and going, it's going to be a non-finish. They're going to take this to Mania. And then Bray Wyatt comes out on Friday night on SmackDown and became clear that this match was going to have WrestleMania implications that we didn't know of when Bray basically called out the winner of this match. But considering that it ended the way it did we get Lashley Wyatt, or do we get a triple threat? Or I mean, Lesnar's path to Mania now seems a whole lot less clear. There's not any obvious opponents for him unless it was a Lashley rematch with Bray Wyatt inserted in it, which also doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's going to be awkward and forced now to get Bray into this, but Bray's already called this out. I mean, unless they called an audible, and went back to like the Vince McMahon days of rewriting the script, minutes before we hit air or while we're on air. I don't really know. I don't know where Bray's place in this is. It would almost make more sense for there to be a reunited Hurt Business going up against the Wyatt Six, as not necessarily, that kind of match, but yeah, it's implied that there's, two different factions now that, are rallying around their generals, so to speak, where you got Bobby Lashley and Bray Wyatt, if Lashley would have won last night, but, it's
so WrestleMania. This booking's left you a bit confused?
Absolutely. I mean,
because why have Bray Wyatt say anything at all about WrestleMania?
Exactly.
And then have that finish. And why would you have your face, who is incredibly over and you have portrayed as an unstoppable monster, get quote unquote desperate, as the announcers say, within 5 minutes and cheat the win? And then where does he go from here? So I think that either Lesnar is not involved in Mania, or they have some serious work to do to make some lemonade out of the lemon they gave us last night.
Yeah, it does not make sense to me, man, unless Lesnar's like, yeah, I'm done after this payday.
And it could be. I mean, it is Lesnar. That could be the way it rolls. Maybe it is Lashley, or maybe, Lashley Wyatt.
Lashley Wyatt. Yeah.
Does that excite you anyway?
You don't think
that's the cinnamon toast crunch match, do you?
And that's why Lesnar was desperate. He's like, I gotta get out of this.
I'm not wrestling in milk.
That was not the way it was booked, but Lesnar's like, nope, I'm done.
Oh, I don't know about this one, Doug. That was definitely the low part of Elimination Chamber, and might end up being the low part of Mania unless they figure something out of this to make it not seem like as much of a mess as it is. But
yeah.
Next, we had a fun little mixed tag: Edge and Beth
Oh,
versus Rhea and Finn of Judgment Day. Nice power lariats at the first with Beth and Rhea like just wailing into each other, very stiff. Doug, when they were doing that, it made me realize when you're seeing them next to each other, they're very similar in style, very similar in look, and I think it's just another thing that shows, man, if Beth had some women actually to work with back in the day,
yes, absolutely,
she would have done very well in this era of wrestling.
She would have absolutely done.
So the biggest heel heat maybe of the night almost, it was guy not even in the match, man. And it's a really great sign that the crowd hates Dom so much.
Because Dom gets so much heel heat. It's not go away heat. It is heel heat.
Heel heat.
So great. Dom at ringside, because I thought, you have to do a lot because you have to keep Rhea strong going into her WrestleMania match. But I was thinking all along that Beth and Edge are going over in this. So how do you do that? But just put Dom at ringside.
Dom at ringside, man. It's everything. Nice superplex by Beth. She was really not showing ring rust at all. For someone that wrestles so irregularly, she can get in there and go still. There was a bad, and I don't know that it was on her or ref or just positioning, but there was a bad botch spot where Beth was pretty late on breaking up a pin after the brass knuckles usage. Yes. And so that was a definite 3 count, and Edge had to roll his own shoulder up. Didn't look great, but I did love that cool double power bomb where it was actually beautiful. The women doing the power bomb on the men.
And at one point, Edge and Fowler are looking at each other, and I think that they were going to grab each other so they didn't get power bombed. It's like suddenly their buddies. Just everybody in that match was top shelf last night.
I mean, I am not a huge fan of like mixed tags, but this one was pretty fun, I will say.
It was fun. And can we talk about that finisher that ended the match?
Sure. Let's do it.
So FTR is coming up with their own contracts pretty soon, and Edge is friends with FTR. I just thought it was interesting that they end with, I forgot what it was called last night, but that's the big rig, man.
I didn't think of that.
That was Edge and Beth, giving a shout out to FTR. They're South Carolina friends.
Doug, I mean, that could even be the, supposed targets that WWE those sources were giving Meltzer that bigger than Jay White in their opinion, but it's because Jay White isn't as well known on these shores. They might see that as a more significant signing at this juncture, at least in terms of American awareness.
True.
Interested. I mean, Edge and Beth go over. So let's talk WrestleMania. Faces are winning here. So what does that mean for Mania? We know Rhea obviously has bigger things. Beth's appearances are just, casual here and there, one-offs. Does this mean Edge versus Finn, which was at one point rumored to be Mania anyway? Because Finn is, Finn sort of took over as the leader of Judgment Day. So this could bring that whole storyline to a close. Or do you think that that this is Edge versus Dom just because Dom is so over as a heel? How do we bring this to a close? Because last night wasn't the close. Does Ray get brought back into this?
Well, I think Ray has to be involved with anything with Dom, but I hadn't really even thought about that. I just kind of enjoyed it for what it was, and I was totally hung up on that finish. I'm like, that was big rig. They just hit a big rig. What's going on?
Well, we know Edge is going to be, featured prominently on Mania. He's too big of a star, only recently back. So his opponent, I would think at this point, would have to be either Finn or Dom, and maybe it's a tag match where gets Ray involved. But I would think that the whole revenge versus Judgment Day doesn't end with what we saw last night. I think it has to be more definitive. And Mania, probably.
You're absolutely right with that. We need a definitive, rubber match there to just punctuate things. But I really had not thought about Edge's, beyond last night. But you're absolutely right. He's Edge. He will be at WrestleMania in some capacity. He and Beth have got their comeuppance now, but maybe it
In the
is.
in the post event press conference, he did accept Austin Theory's, and spoiler on our next match. He is going to be taking on the United States champion tomorrow night on Raw. So maybe it becomes more clear tomorrow.
Okay.
They start building to something. I don't think it's ultimately going to be with Theory, though. I still think that there's
Okay.
Judgment Day business, but somehow
Yeah,
they
I
get their
think
comeuppance tomorrow.
there's still a lot of Edge and House of Purple stuff going on. So maybe we start working a Dom Edge thing for.
Dom's got to
I
have
think
a prominent role. When you hear that
he
heat that his man's getting now, he's got to do
absolutely
something.
does. Absolutely.
Father versus son, felon versus the founder of Judgment Day. I mean, there's got to be somewhere we're going with that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Penultimate match of the night, Doug, was the men's elimination chamber for the U.S. Championship. We kind of gave away the winner already, but it was the Champ Theory against Rollins, Montez Ford, Bronson Reed, Damian Priest, Johnny Gargano. I talked about it last week. Unfortunately, you weren't here to provide your opinion, but what do you think about even having an elimination match that isn't for the world title or for a shot at the world title at Mania? Do you like having a chamber match for the U.S. title?
I do, and I think it was absolutely needed this year with all the storylines going on. You've already got Cody, who's won the Royal Rumble. I know we talked before about maybe splitting the belts, and that would be the way to do this, where Reigns loses without losing. But I think this was the best possible outcome, where you do another championship there and leave the Universal Intergalactic Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Championship unified for the main event. Because I think this was the best possible way they could have done this, and probably the only way they could have done this, considering everything that's at stake with the Bloodline, with Cody at WrestleMania. I think it had to be done this way.
Had to be done this way. Well, we had it start out with Seth and Johnny were the first two. Surprising to learn it was the first time that they had actually even touched each other in WWE. It was really a great tease, though, that definitely more of that, please, in the future, because it was a nice opening sequence ending between that between the rope spear that Johnny pulled off onto the chamber floor, putting Seth into it, which also reminded me, much like in the women's match earlier, like, oh yeah, that floor used to be actually like great metal, and now it's nice and padded, but probably a reason for that. I think the talent were complaining about having to be in these chamber matches because of how brutal that was. Fun to watch Austin plead with Johnny, trying to bond over their NXT days. Johnny wasn't having it.
Nope.
Awesome Simone drop by Bronson Reed, who had a few moments of he had a few moments to kind of raise his profile, which was needed, because I don't think a lot of folks know Bronson Reed that well yet in WWE, and he had they made him look like the monster that you were talking that Asuka needed to be in the first one.
Should have been absolutely, picking up. Oh gosh, was it Theory and Gargano that he had the Samoan drop? Yeah, I had both those guys, and nice little display of strength there. I mean, it was great stuff, man. I mean, I'm calling him Jonah now instead of Bronson Reed, because
honestly, it was more Jonah. It was more like what we saw in New Japan and in Impact.
You're right. It is very much a showcasing of Jonah than the Bronson Reed. But anyway, I mean, I really like their spots, but I've got to say, I mean, Montez Ford,
dear goodness.
Dude, this guy was the Shawn Michaels showstopper, the show stealer, Mr. Elimination Chamber. There's no doubt about this dude's athleticism. I think his performance last night, cemented him. If you thought of him only as a tag team wrestler, I think that performance that he handed in last night said, I'm on my way to a singles run.
Doug, I think all the spots of the night, if you're just talking about pure spots, were all in this one match.
Yes.
that neat spot where Johnny was up on Bronson's shoulders and Seth performed
Yes.
that springboard clothesline that ended up in Johnny being on the end of a poison Rana with Bronson
Yes.
getting his big self over. And then, of course, Montez, as you said, climbing the cage, hanging upside down like a bat, and then dropping himself. Just dropping himself.
Beautiful.
Then there was Johnny's big risk where he did the Hurricanrana on Seth that took both men off the top of a pod.
Goodness.
I mean, it was pretty. There was some really great spots in this match. Reed was the first one eliminated, but again, I think he had some moments because just like you said with Liv taking 2 submissions, it took every person that was in that match to get Reed out of it.
Yes, I loved everybody hitting finishers on him to get him out. That was great.
And I love the flurry at the end by Montez doing all the flips over the top ropes to hit everybody that was still the other 2 men that were standing. But when it came down to Seth and Theory, Ford's elimination, it kind of helped lead to the finish because it allowed Logan Paul to come into an open cage when they were playing the injury angle. And then, of course, leading to Theory retaining the U.S. Championship. Great match. First of all, let's just say this match delivered in my mind anyway. This was inarguably an A+ match.
Absolutely. And I legit thought that Ford was hurt because I was
I did too.
And the way he was selling it, I was like this. I was like, but then they showed a replay, and I was like, oh wait, they showed a replay of him getting hurt. He's not actually hurt.
When they were tended to him, I thought he was, but as soon as they started to try to move him, I'm like, man, isn't that kind of quick to be moving him? And then he sits there on the cage, and I'm like, oh yeah, now I see what's happening.
The door's open.
Still,
but still, I mean, it was great stuff. I mean, beginning to end.
It's been rumored for a while that we were getting Seth versus Logan Paul, so I'm not that mad about the interference and the shenanigans there at the end. Obviously, that is where we're heading. We talk Mania implications here. We got Seth and Paul. Does that do anything for you?
You know what? Logan Paul, he understands. He understands the business, and he is an undeniable athlete. So I'm all for it, man. I've seen what Logan Paul can do in a ring. Seth is Seth.
It's not like he's gonna. Yeah, exactly. It's not like he's being asked to go in there and carry somebody. I mean, it's Seth Rollins, right. So the two of them together should have probably will have a match that is going to be underrated, maybe going in, and then has a chance to have several standing ovations. And this is awesome chance going on throughout. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I mean, Logan Paul, an undeniable athlete. I love how WWE has stepped up their game with their celebrities. Like Bad Bunny. Logan Paul.
Only guys that can go.
I mean, there was a time when I talked trash about McAfee. Then I saw him in the ring and said, "Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. This isn't my old school WWE where Drew Carey's in there with Kane or Pete Rose or something." Yeah.
So obviously we got Seth and Paul. That one's solid. And what does this mean though for Austin Theory and where he goes? Do you think that Montez Ford, Austin Theory is some way that they could take it? Because I don't know, man. Last night looked to me like could be the beginning of that long rumored Montez Ford singles push. Everybody knows he's going to be a breakout star.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of punctuated things last night. Like I said, if you thought of him only as a tag team talent to this point, he will change your mind if you have not seen this. You're like, okay, this guy is hot. This guy is on fire. This guy needs his singles push. I don't know though, but because I've heard a lot about Cena showing up for Theory at WrestleMania, so I'm not sure what's going to pan out from that.
Yeah, the rumors are that, and it was mentioned in the press conference. He was actually asked about that, and of course, he gave he gave us in character type answer that didn't really give anything away. Obviously, Theory's sitting pretty. I mean, there's just no matter which way it goes, he's going to be on the Mania card. Right. And the company rightly sees a lot in that kid, so young, so talented, so much is still ahead for him to accomplish. A big showcase match against Cena does a lot for his stock, but personally, I think that that Theory Montez Ford match could be one of those things that would steal the whole weekend when people aren't expecting
man.
bigger profile matches. But man, you put those two on the biggest stage and let them go.
Let them, yeah.
I hope that's the way they go. But the Cena thing seems to have something behind it.
I would love to see that. I want to see Ford get his opportunity to continue to shine and get that singles push. Nothing against the Street Profits, but Ford. Ford is the Shawn Michaels of that group. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily mean Dawkins that you're the Marty Jannetty, because I think that he's got something to give too. But Montez at some point going to have to shine on the singles, and this could be the start of it. Let's see where they go tomorrow night.
Yep.
That brings us, Doug, to the undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn, and the undisputed highlight of the night. Can we, before we even say anything about what happened in the match, just pause to say that this whole storyline, if in fact this was the end of a certain part of that storyline, is one of the all-time greats, at least in recent WWE history, and is going to forever be remembered and be a defining moment for both of these men?
It absolutely is. And I also think this finally fulfills a promise that we were made, that Triple H made to folks like us, maybe 5, 6, 8 years ago. Let's go back to mid 20, say 2015, Sami Zayn in NXT, when we're both saying this guy could be the next John Cena. This guy could be, when he gets caught up to the main roster, the most successful babyface. They bring guys up like this, they transfer them over, and they continue that momentum that they had in NXT. Finally, after a very long time, and it took Triple H back in charge of creative to get to this point. But all those characters that we invested in NXT coming up to the main roster and then just getting lost in the mix or getting forgotten about or getting their names changed. I think we finally had a promise fulfilled by getting Sami in a main event with Roman Reigns, two very different physique-wise looking dudes. Not the typical WWE main eventer, but I think we are finally to a point in WWE history where you don't have to look like Roman Reigns. You don't have to look like Brock Lesnar. I'm not saying you need to look like me, but you can look like Sami and main event.
9 months, man, of nothing but highlights from these two men, and they gave us one more last night. Match itself, I don't like a champ coming out first. I'll call that out every time. I understand why they did it, because that Montreal reaction for Sami, and then the Sami Uso tights that have been modified to say Sami Zayn. I mean, all of that was perfect before they did anything. And then you have 5 minutes before, after the bell rings, in 5 minutes
of legit nothing but staring, and the crowd was so into it.
Yeah,
because so into it.
The crowd was showing their appreciation. You're getting "this is awesome" chants for guys that hadn't even locked up yet, because they were appreciative of everything in that 9 months we just thought through talking about. That's what that appreciation was for. Is this was a story well told. And now we're so genuinely excited for this that we can barely sit in our seats, and they don't have to do a thing.
Don't have to. I mean, Roman Reigns was working a crowd of 17, 18,000 people with nothing more than facial expressions at that point. And the same thing for Sami. Just working the crowd by just standing there doing absolutely nothing.
The crowd was the other participant in that match. There's no doubt about it. They were in that match the same as those other two men were. And the second they finally did lock up, and then the first big spot where you had the top rope flip to the outside, and then you saw Sami's wife's emotions and the crowd explode.
Yes.
From that moment on, it was just a roller coaster. And even when things were slow and methodical, that roller coaster and those emotions were still right there.
And wasn't it so old school? Like it was slow and methodical.
Yeah.
There were headlocks, there were wrist holds. There
Yes.
weren't these big flippy floppy things that I love. I'm not calling them out and calling them flippy floppy things because I don't like them, but I love them. But there were these moments where it was just a straight up rest hold. There were headlocks. And there was storytelling. There was so
So,
much.
yes, because they had some of the
So
flippy
much.
floppy too, but
Absolutely.
they went a half an hour, and of course, the first 5 minutes of that was nothing, like literally nothing.
Yes.
It just was. It had multitudes in this match. The beatdown became methodical because Roman should physically look like he beats down and toys with
Yes.
a guy.
Absolutely.
It made the hope spots though, like the springboard,
Yes.
reverse leapfrog. I mean, stuff like that became much more effective because of the methodical parts that led up to it. Roman addressing Sammy's wife.
Yes.
I wanted all this for you. You were going to be
I did
like
all
them.
this for you so we can take care of you.
Perfect.
So great. And then Sammy, when he finally kisses his wife and then jumps back in the ring. I love it.
She was great. She played her.
She was great.
Well, like I was telling my own wife, I was like, at certain point, you have to wonder, yes, it's scripted, but how much of that was also real? Because here you are, you gave up like prime years of your life, probably to help support the family while Sammy was out wrestling in bingo halls and VFWs, risking his life and health with no insurance, I'm sure, and for little pay. And here you are, the biggest face in wrestling, in your home in an arena. That kiss and the emotions they were showing were just as real as they were part of a scripted storyline.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
Absolutely.
That's the beauty of wrestling, when it kind of mixes together, when you know that what you're watching is a show, but there's also when he kisses his wife and you were getting the feels when you know the journey that they've taken together. It's real.
Exactly. I mean,
still real to me.
It's still, I mean, it's the best television I've seen since Breaking Bad, I think. I mean, it really is. Because you're on this emotional roller coaster. You are invested in all of these characters. We haven't even got to like the 17 ref bumps yet.
Oh, well. So we need to get the nice sunset power bomb from the top. I love the sequence of the Superman punch, which was countered into an exploder, only for the haluva kick to then be countered into the Superman punch. I kept thinking, man, they're both there with the controllers and hitting like the right combo for like reverse.
Yeah, I went into this going, Sammy's not going to win. I don't know how he loses, but there were legit spots where I was like, oh my God, they're giving it to Sam. Oh, nope, Roman kicked out. I was there. Yeah, I don't know.
Let's talk about that.
I was there.
So Sammy, I love the Superman punch by Sammy as a sign of disrespect. I thought the crowd was into the near falls, but I'm not sure that as a viewer, I felt like it was possible until, because I mean, there was a couple near falls. The crowd was like popping for it. I'm like, that's not the finish. Exactly. Sammy's not winning this. No. And then that blue thunder bomb. And that's when they had me. That's when I'm like, oh, maybe.
Like, no, they're not doing this. They're not. I hope. Oh no. Okay, no, they're not doing this.
Things became a little more clear when we got the ref bump. We got the visual 3 count. I know why they're used, and I know why they used them in this one. Then came the second ref bump. Did you like the ref bump? Do you forgive the ref bump?
I think what got the ref bump over for me was Paul Heyman basically calling out the ridiculousness of the overbooking at that point. Hey, we got 2 ref bumps. We got 2 refs out. Do whatever you want. And I'm like,
that's a pretty good Paul impersonation, by the way. That's pretty good.
To that point, I did not like. I'm with you. I get why they're used. You get Sammy over. You can say Sammy got the visual 3 count. Sammy got like a visual like 6 or 8 count there. He should have had the win then. And then we have the other ref bump, and I'm like, okay, this is a bit ridiculous now. But then Paul just kind of brought it all back to let me know this is wrestling. This is why I'm watching this in the first place.
Well, during the first ref bump, Jimmy attacked Sammy. So that kind of foretold that we had to have a second ref bump, because now
Exactly. We got to
as
get.
soon as just yeah, as soon as we had the one Uso Jimmy in there, now the match was going to hinge on, well, what does Jay do?
What does Jay do? Yeah,
And
and
what
you know
Jay
that's
did was, I mean, nothing. He would not hit Sami. In fact, the tribal chief took the chair out of his hand, but his interference did end up leading to the finish because Sami accidentally spears Jay, and that leads to the end for Sami. And man, you talk about like a crowd going from 1,000 to 0. Like it was instant, like the air came out of the balloon.
It was
because they wanted him so much.
They wanted him so much, but I mean, I can't complain with the finish because I mean, it's this great story that was told. It's what makes wrestling so great. I don't think we're finished with the bloodline stories with Sami yet. There's still a lot more to tell there, but I can't be mad because of the booking here. I'm heartbroken for Sam. I'm feeling
For
something
Sami.
for wrestling. You know, they pulled me in. They got me to invest in the character, and at the end, I feel bad for Sami. Not that oh, the wrong guy won here. Vince McMahon's pushing this kid. No, it's not that. They told an amazing story. This is part of that story, and I don't like it, but I accept it.
Did you acknowledge it? Is that what you're saying?
I acknowledge it.
So let me look at it in a vacuum. In a vacuum, without thinking about Mania, without thinking about Cody, without thinking about where they're heading next. We'll get to that here in just a sec. Just looking at the last 8-9 months, and then what they did last night was just wrestling perfection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even with the ref bumps, and even with the crowd not getting what it wanted, us not getting what we wanted, you can't complain about what they gave us.
No.
That said, let's look at Mania. KO does the save, and it's long been rumored that the Mania contest was going to be Usos defending their tags championships that they've held for like a record number of days now against KO and Sami. Yeah, they didn't make Jay make a decision as much as a non-decision. So they bought themselves a little bit of time.
And also, they didn't. It's almost like KO returned a favor. Not
he didn't hang around.
He didn't hang around. I know that Sami and Kevin are very sensitive about how they're used together because they have done it so much throughout their careers. And it has to be something, I think at this point, it has to be something really special or something really big for them to be either going against each other or teaming with each other. So
now, they've never held tag team gold, either of them, at the main roster.
Right.
So beating the Usos, finishing a bloodline storyline at the biggest stage in wrestling, is that big enough to bring them together?
That's what I'm wondering is that the big enough storyline? Because they kind of like you say, they left it with Jay, they left it with KO and Sami too. There was no big hug, no big reunion, no big,
Well, I mean, if Jay would have hit Sami, then it would be obvious this is where they're going to go for WrestleMania. The fact that they didn't go that way, they've bought themselves a little more time to figure it out, because you could do that, or you could, if you still think that Sami's the triple threat.
Triple threat. Yes, I think they're just going to play on that and play this by ear. Do they inject Sami? Yeah, I mean they've got 6 weeks to decide.
And they bought themselves time by not going with what I imagine was an original decision where Jay was going to pick a side, and it becomes clear It's obvious that WWE was not going to have Sami win last night. You can look now and go, they were committed to Rhodes Reigns, and that's where they were going. But they definitely gave themselves some wiggle room out of Usos, Sami, and KO, because apparently backstage there are proponents of folks that want Sami involved in the world title mix, because apparently they can see that he's not just being invested in by the fans, but that he's a needle mover when it comes to numbers.
He moves, yes, and he moves a lot more needles than a lot of other talent right now, and they're starting to notice this. I've read this too, Yeah, and a shout out to Michael Hayes too, because he has been. I was reading just today that Michael Hayes has been the man behind, the producer behind most of the Bloodline like matches, and so good job
Kudos.
there.
So, Doug, let's just book it here. But we make wild assumptions on this show. That's part of what speculation's about. You're booking this thing. Do we go for the tag with the lifelong friends, or does that feel like a come down? And would you insert Sami into the triple threat to give him the main event at WrestleMania as well?
Man, I have said for a long time now that Sammy is the one to unseat the tribal chief. I think probably had Cody not injured himself, we would have not gotten this far with
Nope.
Reigns and Sammy. This whole bloodline angle would not have happened the way it happened. But Cody did get injured. Sammy got himself over in an unbelievable way. And I think if I'm booking this, I'd put Sammy in there. I get that Cody sells merchandise, but Sammy's that needle mover. Sammy's again. It goes back to that promise that Triple H made so long ago, and we're finally getting to see it fulfilled. Guys that look like Jonah, guys that look like Sammy, guys that look like Johnny Gargano, or even Tommaso Ciampa. These guys can be main eventers. These guys could be the face of the company. Give them, just give them the chance and see what they can do and see what a 2023 wrestling audience really wants, not what a 70-year-old man is laughing about his fart jokes and vomit and nonsense like that. Let's give the fans what they want.
Let's give the fans what they want. And Doug, what they want is the big finish. Let's bring this home.
Let's do it.
All right. We talked to Elimination Chamber. Definitely fans go see it. Doug, I did a U. I got a theme here. My 1, 2, 3 are all Elimination Chamber.
Hey, when we do when we come off a pay-per-view, everything of mine is in the pay-per-view. So what are we starting with then?
Botch of the night.
Lesnar, Lashley. Lesnar, just I don't know what they're doing. It almost feels like they don't know what they're doing. I know I said in our last pay-per-view review, I don't think they know what they're doing with Bray Wyatt or how to handle him or how to deal with that creativity. I get that they got to pay bills, man. I get that, do the corporate thing with the Mountain Dew tie-in. The Cinnamon Toast Crunch,
man. That still awaits us. It's been called. That's happening.
I jokingly say Lesnar heard about that. I was like, nope. I'm calling an audible and get myself disqualified so I don't have to deal with that nonsense. I'm going to go hunt for the next few months. But I don't know what's going on there or how. But, I guess at the end of the day, that's what makes wrestling great, when we can set and not call what's going to happen next. But I just did not like that finish. It just seemed cheap and lazy. And you have these dream matches with, these two MMA guys, and the baby face is desperate and he's, pulling these heel tack. I just did not like it. Didn't care for it.
So you went for the serious one because, I'm with you. That was definitely the dud. But my botch of the week, way less serious, but way to break kayfabe, Michael Cole, right before the main event, telling me that the Russian Bear Ivan Koloff was actually from Montreal. What?
I completely missed that.
Oh, yeah. Can it happen again in Montreal that a hometown boy? Just say Ivan Koloff, like when he finally beat Bruno Sammartino, the record reign, it was a Montreal boy that did it. Could another Montreal boy do it? Just say Ivan Koloff. Don't call him the Russian Bear and then make modern fans go, why was he the Russian Bear if he was from Montreal?
No.
Oh, but Doug, performance of the week.
So this one's a hard one. But, I've become such a fanboy, especially after last night. I've got to shout out Montez Ford and everything he did in the Elimination Chamber. Because, again, I say, if you don't believe this man is a single star, just watch the performance he turned in the Elimination Chamber, and you will become a believer.
So the 2 weeks that you weren't able to join us, I gave my performer of the week to Cody Rhodes for his Royal Rumble promo. after winning. And then last week I gave it to Cody Rhodes and Paul Heyman for the brilliant work they did.
Absolutely.
I'm giving Cody at least a co-starring role in my Performer of the Week yet again. Starting Monday, Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes. What they had, again, you have two storylines going different directions, both faces. Everyone obviously is focused on Elimination Chamber and Sami, but the big goal is WrestleMania. How do you keep both these guys face without fans choosing one over the other? And yet somehow they got in the ring together, and by the end of it, it was you go finish your story like I'm going to finish, and it was rah for everybody. The fans ate up every bit of it. It was a perfect way to keep somebody in the background hot that wasn't even involved in the pay-per-view last night at all, but yet was. So Sami and Cody delivered perfection on Monday. Sami and his emotional in-ring on SmackDown on Friday, and then what Sami did in the ring last night in front of a hometown crowd that was basically his WrestleMania, as he had said. Sami Zayn for that this week, the last 9 months. I mean, Sami Zayn owned wrestling this week with some assists from great supporting characters like Cody Rhodes and Roman along the way. But yeah, Sami. Match of the week.
Main event, right? Main event. I presumed you would go with Sami, so I went with Ford just to give him some acknowledgement.
Oh no, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was wrestling perfection. Chef's kiss, wrestling perfection there. It does not get any better than that. It is classic good versus evil. There's clearly defined, and beyond there being these clearly defined stakes, clearly defined bad guy, clearly defined good guy, there's so many layers that you put in. I mean, it takes a couple of ref bumps to get there, but by the time you're at the end of that, you've got the, what's going on with the Usos? Where's Jay? What exactly is KO doing? Was that just a returning the favor? Or, is he, does he have his buddies back again? So much going on there. Where does the story go next? Because it's not over. We all know it's not over. There are too many, frayed ends. Things aren't tied up neatly and just pushed along. So much. It was just great all over. I mean, like you said, what we're talking about, 5 minutes of just standing around staring at each other with the crowd going wild.
It's a match that will, I'm sure, factor in at the end of the year to a lot of folks' best wrestling matches of 2023. So definitely go check it out. Check out Elimination Chamber. And fans, check us out next week. We're back on next Sunday, 8 o'clock live here on Facebook on 8 Eastern time. And then, of course, on demand on our Facebook and YouTube channels. We're switching it up just for a week. We're talking AEW. We're doing a Revolution preview, and then after that, we'll be in the thick of Mania season, so look out for our March schedule that's going to be heavy on WrestleMania. We do realize 2 weeks from now, there's an AEW pay-per-view, so stay tuned to how we're going to handle that, but next week, we're going to be previewing that pay-per-view with AEW Revolution. We're previewing it next Sunday at 8.
We'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Go watch some wrestling.
See ya.